It's Friday night. It's time for a podcast. It's Friday night. We're going to do a show. Sam's going to make a bunch of noise with the mic stand because it's a shitty mic stand and I need to get us a new one. But then not enough people listen, so I can't afford a new one, so we're just going to deal with the shitty one. So, anyway, we're almost agreement at gmail.com. I guess it doesn't help that I cussed this early in the show and we can't get monetized on YouTube anyway. Fuck it. Almost agreement at gmail.com. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Go to the website, almostagreement.com. Just check it out. It's got cool stuff on it. It's got links to all the episodes that we've ever done. You can go back and hear some interviews I've done with different people over the time, and I'll start getting some more interviews going. Some other exciting things coming up. So anyway, we're almost in agreement. Shoot us emails. Find us on Facebook. Find us on your favorite podcast provider, and give us a like, share, friend, follow. Tell everybody about us. Because we're going to keep doing this, and we're going to keep figuring some stuff out, because we had a bunch of crazy shit going on this week. And we're going to talk about as much of it as we remember to talk about. So, intro's out, and Sam and I are in. You okay over there, buddy?
I'm okay.
No, you're not.
Be cool if I wasn't muted.
Yeah, well, be cool if I was a better producer, but I'm not, so.
Right, so
hey, buddy, how you going?
You did my check for yourself. That's cool. I'm okay. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you, Fran. How are things?
Things be.
All right, I got a special plug-in I'm going to do from the little chat I had with the Compass guys earlier today, and that's it. See you guys later.
Boom.
The show that ends before it begins. So, yeah, new indictment rolled out this week. County Commission is talking about regulating Airbnbs, which is interesting. Kansas sheriff killed an old lady. That's my headline. Oh yeah, that I forget. That was this week. That Oliver Anthony thing, was this week. It didn't exist last week.
Who?
The Oliver Anthony, dude. That song, that kind of country
I don't think
bluegrass kind of thing.
Started this week.
It blew up
a couple
this
weeks
week.
ago.
The whole thing was a thing this week.
Gotcha.
I'm sure he recorded it more than yesterday, but
right.
And I thought that was it was very interesting, all the chatter about it. Because to me, like, the number one thing, did you listen to it?
Yeah.
What did you think of it?
Yeah.
Before I go into my whatever.
Yeah, it was okay.
Like, but that's not really your jam anyway. Like, it's not really stylistically you. A dude and a guitar and a hard draw is not your jam. I'm not a country guy either.
I like a little bit. I'm not hard on the country, or I like a little bit of folk, tiny bit of bluegrass, but
I will steal a lot of my analysis from Sagar from Breaking Points, because he had a good point in it. Is that it is as philosophically confused as the Republican Party is right now, and I think it's perfect, because I think the first couple lines are great. I think it's legit shit. And actually, before I go into breaking it down line by line, which I don't think I'm going to do that for the whole thing. The thing of watching all the freak out, either pro or con about it, that I think is just fucking nuts, is how dismissive the left is of it, because of some of the things he says in there. Because there's an Epstein thing, and
I must have missed that.
Instead of bitching about, there's a line about I wish you cared more about miners than some miners on an island. So it's talking about cared more about coal miners than people than Epstein shit.
Yeah.
Is basically the phrase. And I think this is the problem with the left at large. And I really do. And this is an oversimplification. Please email me almostagreement@gmail.com and tell me how wrong I am not. Is the left, both sides to some degree, but the left specifically, is so dismissive of the point of view of so many people, and then wonder why they're willing to vote for a guy like Trump. That part of the left boggles my mind, and this song is a good example of it, because this is a viewpoint that is not uncommon. And especially in the post-Trumpiest stuff, but just in general of kind of country, more rural citizens of the United States of America, this viewpoint is not rare. And how dismissive the left is of people who identify with this song boggles my mind. And then they wonder why they can't win elections in rural places. And it's you were literally telling these people they're stupid. Another Jennifer Owens move to call them, literally you're dumb. That's the wrong way to look at the situation. It might be the wrong way to look at the situation, but you don't tell somebody they're dumb and then expect them to get on board with whatever you're talking about. I just don't think that's a win. And that's been the synopsis of a lot of the analysis that I've seen from, not analysis, a lot of the chatter that I've seen, at least in my circles, which my Facebook feed is apparently all Knoxville's angry leftist community. But even that, on a lot of the national stuff, because, I mean, like, they did 2 segments on this on the Breaking Point show because it was such a big phenomenon.
2 segments?
2 different days because of different stuff about it. You know, it's like there's the Babylon Bee that I was telling you about a couple weeks ago, like the chive. It's like a version of the chive or whatever.
I don't recall.
The Babylon Bee. Anyway, they did a thing. They had it's the same as not the chive, but as the Onion. It's the same kind of deal where they did a headline: country music industry freaks out about a guy from the country writing a song that people like just making fun of how non-studio engineered this country song is. And that was a good line too. But I mean, starts off talking about, like, you know, just living a shitty life.
I meant to go back and actually, like, read some of the lyrics. I just listened through it once and then heard a few lines. And
yeah,
and I'll admit I was immediately kind of dismissive. I don't know how genuine, you know, this song is to him. Like I said, my initial thing was, I was like, this just, I think you said something, this is way too much, like, you know, nose on or whatever.
Right. But I think that's my point. Is that it's so on the nose for what the right, at least the poor rural right, is today, that it's too good, like it's too accurate. And I think there's a whole subset of people that like want to like it because they agree with the sentiment that is being put out.
And maybe that's why I kind of got like the feeling like this is just kind of like pulling at some heartstrings and just kind of like, you know, stereotypical tropes. I think that's kind of what I said.
It checks off a lot of boxes for the new right. And if you're a new right person, there's a book. It's kind of a big deal book a couple of years back. It's kind of breaking down like the fall of the U.S. empire, kind of, you know, or how to watch an empire die or something like that. And it's talking about just like the different stuff. And one of those things is that instead of art being something appreciated for what it is, art becomes being appreciated for how it makes you look. So instead of being
you
like
as the artist, or you as the
you
interpreter?
as the interpreter of the art.
Okay.
And so it's like you want art that agrees with your mindset, and then you're going to glorify art that's just a bigger version of you philosophically, and that's what this song is to me. Because again, like I said, this is perfectly right now, because of the inconsistency between, you know, because it starts off talking like labor issues. It's like, you know, I work overtime hours for bullshit pay. And the Richmond, north of Richmond, is a reference to D.C. people and politicians, which I think a lot of left-right people will agree that the politicians are a shit show and they're fucking everything up and blah, 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 blah. So that lands well with a lot of people. But it's like, you know, it's like a pro-labor intro and then talking about welfare queens being the problem. It's like, well, no, you know, the fact that you can't work a decent job and get decent pay and live a decent life off of it, that's not the welfare state's problem. But then he has, like, the chorus has a whole line about how the dollar's not worth shit and it's taxed to hell, which I think is not inaccurate for a lot of people. Going back to what you were talking about a couple weeks ago with, you know, the wealthiest of the wealthy, they could afford to lose more to taxes and end up not, and still have a good lifestyle, where the bottom, as a percentage of their lifestyle, they lose more in taxes and stuff like that. Yeah. And, you know, and I didn't disagree with you at the time, and I don't disagree with you now on that. And so, like, again, like, I think there's a lot of lines in here and there's a lot of reality in here. And you know, I think it's kind of cheap. I think there's better ways to go about some of the issues at play than going after welfare queens, even though I don't think it's a bad complaint. I just think there's on the hierarchy of things that are worth complaining about. Yeah. You know, like the totality of the welfare state against the Pentagon's budget is penance.
All like welfare abuse has always been a common, just kind of like thorn in the side of everyone, that it's just always been blown out of proportion. That it's definitely not as bad as.
And it's an easy poke at the left. And it's one of those. It's an easy poke at the left because you like the Democrats tend to promote these systems and want these things and expand these things. You want to help out the less fortunate that are just abusing it, and you just want to let them keep abusing it. Right. It's like, well, no, we're not. Yeah, I mean, we want to stop the abuse, but we want to help those that need it. And it's actually a pretty. I thought it was a pretty well written little turnaround that he did on it, because he's talking about, you know, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, then maybe my taxes shouldn't pay for your bag of fudge rounds. It's like, It's not a bad little grouping phrase there. I mean, but again, my point is not so much that I agree or disagree with what he's saying, but there's a lot of people that feel that way realistically. And the sad part is that same person.
A lot of people feel all sorts of ways. And
sure. But
should we okay all of those feelings?
I'm not saying to acknowledge that they're true is not okaying them.
Gotcha.
But to be dismissive of them is not okay either, even if they're true or not, even if they're not good feelings. You need to acknowledge that they exist, and if there's a way to address those feelings to help that person or the community at large get better, you're not going to know that you need what you need to go after if you refuse to listen to people when they tell you what they think their problem is. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to go after that part of it, but you got to give them something. And I think number 1A is make them feel like that they're part of the thing. And by completely ignoring them and shutting out, and you're a fucking idiot, and it's not welfare that's the problem. It's, the Republicans don't tax enough, so you don't get enough shit. And he's already complaining about taxes, so that's not going to land with him. Like standard left lines aren't going to pick this guy. This guy's got the left has no answers for this person, not him as an individual, but the people that truly identify with this song. And that's the problem. And the Democrats can't figure out why they can't win rural counties, and it's like that. You don't listen to them. You don't address their actual issues when they're screaming in your face.
I don't quite see it. But.
Okay. Anyway, that's that Oliver Anthony.
I mean, I don't see too much push on the GOP to push for workers' rights.
No, they're not. That's the confusion again. That's the That's the joke. Is the confusion. The confusion philosophically of the song is that that's not what the GOP does, and the free market that quote unquote the right says they're for and doesn't do isn't helping this guy either. The free market is why he works overtime hours for bullshit pay. Yeah. I would argue that the free market is not why his dollar ain't worth shit. But that's there's a couple of good, again, like I said, there's a couple of good, like, actual issues that he's not trying to put, he's just, to me, he's calling out the problem. And I think that the taxing situation, I think, there's a whole line in there about they want to know what God, it's a good line, again. They want to know what you think, they want to know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do. But that was a good that's the part of the chorus, too. That was a good line.
Yeah, I didn't care for that.
Really? All right.
No.
I think I think I get it in the mindset. I think I agree with that line. I think I have a perfect example of it for all the Tennesseans, at least, in where the politicians, they want to know what you're doing all the time. And the current one for me is that this new stupid fucking hemp law thing, they want to know which one. It's not enough that they're getting the taxes already, and I'm doing more work to make sure that I collect taxes for them, and I'm not going to go down that bullshit thing where I hate being the tax man thing. But why do they need the data? What's the data for? Because they want to know what people want. To what end? I don't know yet. But they're for some reason they feel like they need to know that, and so they're making it my job to collect that data for them.
Okay.
I'm just like I said. I think they do. I think they do want to know what you're thinking and what you're doing.
I don't think the state wants to know what you're doing. I think
in the meta version.
Whatever. I think as far as the tax purpose goes, they want to know what derivatives are being sold. I think it's more what they're interested in, especially with this being a burgeoning, quote unquote, kind of new market. They're trying to figure out what the fuck is being sold.
I suppose. I mean,
I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, we want to know like who's buying what and where and how much of what and where and how much money's getting spent per county on this and that.
They will know that. That data will exist
by proxy. Yes.
So, okay, I don't know why you.
I mean, do you think it's a precursor to then increasing taxes on certain counties that do happen to sell more of a certain derivative?
I don't think it'd be. I don't think they can go county to county. I think it has to be a flat, whatever. The county themselves may want to do it.
Spear tax and liquor tax, all the same throughout the state.
Any tax that the state is the instigator of, I guess, for lack of a better word, because there's local option that the state gives the local municipalities an option to add on to.
That's right, like your county tax or whatever.
Right.
For county sales tax.
Right. For the sales tax portion of things is that there's an option, there's a range that the localities are allowed to add if they want to. But I don't think the state could say, Shelby County, you're going to pay a 15% tax on this. Knox County, you're going to pay a 7% tax on this.
I mean, I can't think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are many other industries that the Commerce Department has you break down your income based on different products that you sell or provide. I don't think this is like out of the norm and necessarily like nefarious. Like we just want to know what everyone's buying. I think it is. It's Department of Ag and Department of Commerce. They're trying to figure out what's being sold and how much of it is taxable.
I mean, sure, from Ag's perspective, but Ag's not doing it. Revenue is.
Yeah, whatever. Commerce. Sorry, I said commerce, okay. not revenue.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was just because it is a different thing. I apologize. I didn't know if you were being intentional or not. My bad.
No, I'm just being stupid. I just don't know what departments are taking what.
I mean, but again,
are both under the quote unquote Department of Commerce or State Department of Commerce?
I don't know if you have a State Department of Commerce. Huh.
Quelle question.
Commerce and Insurance, TDCI. The Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance. Okay, so they regulate insurance, fire and inspection, securities, TennCare oversight. So they're in the medical adjacent / permitting.
That's the only amount of commerce they really are over.
Right. So if you're a I would think that like a CPA. So if you're a certified professional, your certification comes through commerce.
I always thought that was certified practicing accountant.
It was public.
Public accountant. Okay.
Yeah. Certified public accountant.
Public.
But if you're a certified professional, I think commerce would manage those. In conjunction with if there's a subset. So like a doctor is going to, the Department of Health and Human Services is going to be a part of it, I would assume. But I think the actual licensure would come through the Department of Commerce or something like that. Anywho.
Let's say it's Department of Revenue that wants the breakdown.
Right. Which again, all the departments share all their information with each other and it could be with the intent. But here's the bottom line is revenue or Ag, who is the one that's actually responsible for the safety and shit. They can't
give you a good breakdown.
It's not even that they can give me a good breakdown. They don't know what they're doing yet. So the data is not for them, obviously, because they don't have a structure to build and use the data for.
Well, I would almost encourage you, and I say this jokingly but half seriously, call them back again and I'm assuming you probably have to notify them that hey, I'm recording this, but I want you to tell me that
we're a one-party state. I don't have to.
Oh, you don't have to?
Nope. We're a one-party state, bro.
Really? Even if you're calling the state?
Fuck yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if it had to do something if you're actually calling state government that you still have to notify them.
No, we're one party.
Anyway.
I mean, I'd probably do it anyway just to cover my ass, but
right.
And partially just to see how they respond.
But I mean, if it is how it is, like you said, I'm not disputing what you're saying. But I mean, if you can at least get the state, that's one thing to hold in your pocket. Be like, hey, I called them on this date, and even the Department of Agriculture that is supposed to oversee all of this mess.
That's a good point.
Still can't even tell me.
All right. So here's I'm going to start a Patreon or GoFundMe for our 75 fans or whatever we have that listen regularly. And just everybody send me $10, and so I can get something to travel record with because this setup's a little
I've got one you can borrow. I mean, please still send your money.
It's too late now, man. I'm trying to be a salesman here. You fucked it up. But
you can put it to other uses. Obviously, we need to know
because, some of them, yeah. Because alcohol, Tennessee Alcoholic Beverage Commission, their use of verifying stuff is not. They don't break it down this way. It's just liquor, period. But the reason that they do it, the way they have it set up is that if they want to, they can essentially do some backwards math with the distributors. So they can go and subpoena, I guess for lack of a better word, all the distributors that we use for all of our orders over a period of time.
Sales records, basically, yeah.
Right, so whatever they sold to us against what we were reporting and do the math and say, well, you did, you bought $10,000 worth of liquor, and you only reported $15,000 in sales.
Right. There's no way you only made $5,000 off all of that.
Right. Right. Because they'll come in and inspect and do an inventory of what's in stock and stuff like that.
Right.
And so they have it set up in a way that they can do that. Like, it is illegal for a bar to go to a liquor store to grab a bottle if they run out in the middle of the night, like in the middle of a shift.
Huh.
It is a crime because then, they can't track it for the retail establishments.
Weird.
Not to say that people don't do it fairly regularly, but it is against the law.
But I could see that being a semi issue.
I mean, that's just them protecting their revenue. That's all they're after. They want to make sure that you're reporting correctly.
Because they make more sales tax off of you selling it by the drink versus...
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Because theoretically what you could do is you go to the liquor store, buy the bottle.
Wait, they're getting it both. Why would they be opposed to it? Because they're getting sales tax. They're getting sales tax if you buy it from the liquor store, and they're getting your.
Or I could go to the liquor store and buy a bottle and sell it without taxing it, and they don't know that I did it. You know what I'm saying? So let's say we go buy a fifth of Jack.
That would take some register finagling.
Okay, or just I mean, it depends on the place. Like if you're decently established and you know what you're doing and what you move in your place, you could do it.
Right. I mean, where there's a will, there's a way in many of areas.
Or you could sell it. You could sell it to the customer with the tax and then just not pay the tax.
Or just run a special, cash only sales that night.
Right.
Like
something. Right.
Jack and Cokes, $5.
$5 Jack and Cokes tonight.
Right.
Cash only. And right.
But
I was saying the other way you could do it too is you could is for your register's sake, you could do those sales, and the register is going to not only collect the sales price, but both regular sales tax and liquor tax. So if you're selling it for $5, you're going to get an additional $1.25 in the transaction, and then not pay those taxes on the other side, and they don't have a way to track and say, well, because you're reporting it to them, and you don't have to report it. I mean, you have to report it legally, but if you're going to go through the process of stealing...
See, if you're doing that on a grand scale, it could be an issue, but... I mean, I guess where you would allow one bottle, the law would then allow multiple bottles.
Right. And I mean, again, like I said, it's them protecting their revenue. They don't want to give... And I get it, I guess. I mean, I understand the premise behind it. It's them wanting to make sure that they can verify that your sales make sense. Because you're also supposed to report your inventory at the beginning and end of the month. Each time you report to ABC when you fill out the form that you have to fill out to pay liquor tax.
You just give a dollar amount of your liquor sales, or
right. You say this is what I sold in liquor, and then it does the math and says how much you owe. They want everything. Talk about data. They want all sorts of shit. They want any variation of discounts. So if you did a 2-for-1. They want your total sales, say $10,000. How much of that $10,000 was 2-for-1? How much of that $10,000 was happy hour? How much of that $10,000 in sales was X? And then other if you did a different special. And every month you're supposed to report to them every single drink and your retail on it. Not every single drink sold, but every single drink option sold.
What your pricing level is?
Yeah. Now that one, the liquor or ABC, Department of Alcohol or whatever it is for the state, they flat told me you just got to do it every 6 months. But essentially, you're supposed to present a schedule, is what they call it. We sell Jack Daniels at 1 1/4 for this much. We sell Jack Daniels at 2 ounces for this much. We sell Jose Cuervo at 1 1/4 for this much. We sell Jose Cuervo 2 ounces for this much. And I asked him, I was like, "What the fuck are you? Like, are you guys serious?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, we sell margaritas."
When are you doing 1 1/4 pours?
All the time. That's standard.
I thought the little shot measuring were an ounce.
No, 1 1/4, 3/4 is the standard. Is the standard variation. So,
like the little 2 little cups that are kind of an upside down thing.
Yeah, they have a bunch of different ones. You can get them in all sorts of different sizes, but the standard is 1 1/4, 3/4. So a Sex on the Beach vodka, peach schnapps.
I guess I always just thought it was like 1 ounce, 2 ounce.
Right. Vodka, peach schnapps, and some juice. It's the big cup of vodka, little cup of peach schnapps. So like most of your standard mixed drinks, that's the breakdown. 1 1/4, 2. And so most bars traditionally price their liquor at 1 1/4, and then a double is 2 ounces. So it's not a double of 1 1/4. It's just, and so
a 2 ounce pour.
Right. So you go from a 1 1/4 to 2 ounce pour, and that's a double. And so, but they want you to list.
So when I ask for a double, I'm not actually getting double the amount that I thought I was getting. Double. Guess that makes sense why it's not double the price. Or exactly. It probably is.
No, most places it's like 25-30% of the original price. So if it's a $6 cocktail, it's probably to give it the bump or the double. It usually goes up $2 or $3 from. So it'd be like $8 or $9 for a double. Anyway,
it's good talk on liquor.
They do want a lot. They want a lot of fucking information, and it's fucking annoying.
I mean, it's revenue. I mean, they're scrutinizing money that's coming into the state.
Right. And that's why they're the one department that I'm very careful to not piss off.
Right.
Because they're one department.
I don't know if it's in part to try to, I guess, stop underground bars, essentially. Of trying to find, places that may or not be buying, bulk from a liquor store and having their own like little hole in the wall liquor or bar set up.
I don't know. I don't know why they do. I don't understand why they care about all the breakdown details. Like I understand. I mean, I don't particularly like it, but I understand the premise of saying, okay, you're taking, we can go and pull the records, because the distributors are obligated to keep the records and all that kind of shit, and they're obligated to have all the paperwork that I'm allowed to buy liquor and they're allowed to sell it to me and all that kind of shit.
All right.
And that upon request, that they're obligated to hand over to the state a breakdown of their sales to me over a period of time. Like I understand the premise behind that, and really that's not a huge ask for either for the distributor. It's not a huge ask. That's not something that should be super difficult for them to put together.
Right. It's like click, here you go.
Right. And then, but I don't understand why they care about discounting and stuff like that. Like I don't understand why they care.
It goes into the revenue side of it. If they're trying to scrutinize how much revenue was brought in, it helps them if you've already told them, like, hey, we did this much because it was happy hour, or we did this much because it was a 2-for-1 Tuesday.
Right. Oh, interesting fact, even on a 2-for-1, the combined total cannot be less than the cost of the liquor going into it.
Assuming that makes sense from both sides of it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It does and doesn't. Like, I like, you can give away beer. You don't have, like, I could give you a beer if you walk into my place, like here's a beer, buddy. Thanks for coming out. I cannot give you a shot. That will be criminal. Or at least license forfeiture-able.
Gotcha.
And so it's like, okay, so you won't let me lose my own money? But again, it goes back to their ability to track what I'm selling and make sure that I'm, or that a bar's not going, well, the liquor's free, but you got to buy the juice for $10.
Yeah.
And so at minimum, they're going to get
free whiskey when you buy a $5 bottle of Coke.
Right. The really easy math would be they pull the thing from the vendors, from all the distributors, and they say, okay, well, if they sold it for a half of a penny over cost, then their gross sales for all the stuff they bought should be X, and then their taxable should be equatable from that. So, like, if I claim $10,000 in sales, which would be $1,500 taxed, or I would pay $1,500 in liquor tax for that, and I have $12,000 in purchases, something's wrong. So if I'm at zero to start to finish. Like if I have no inventory before or after. Because if I bought $12,000 worth of stuff, I have to sell at least $12,000 worth of stuff, which for them is an extra $500 in revenue. So anyway, moving on. Yeah, you're right. You tried to do it before. I apologize for going back to it. Richmond, taxes are stupid. I don't know if I'm ready for the Kansas thing. I do want to talk about it, but I'm not sure yet.
What do you want to talk about before that?
I think this is a bigger, longer topic, but I'd like to start on it maybe tonight. Is this the rent thing? We've talked a little bit about the rent and stuff like that.
Right.
So Zeke Streetman, don't know who you are. Good on you. He sources his own Facebook post, says, quote, The average rent in Knoxville Metro FMR. I'm not exactly sure what FMR stands for. Something Metro Region area.
Federal? No.
Anyway, the average rent in the Knoxville Metro FMR area in February 2023 was $1,606 a month at approximately 984 square feet. This was sourced from rentcafe.com, which there's issues in that in and of itself, but we'll just go with the stats as we see. Continue, the quote is, for that rent to be affordable, 30% of your income. That means someone working for minimum wage must work 170.4 hours per week. And this is according to the City of Knoxville Housing and Development Department, May 2023. So I'm assuming that 30% stat, that 30% generic number, comes from that. That's where that's the reference of where he gets that City of Housing. That's where he gets that reference. 20 is the number I've always used.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought it was like just kind of one of those adages.
Right.
I guess 20 is the... What we would think would be the standard adage,
right? Because it doesn't make sense to reference, because it's just math. You don't have to reference math, because if it's 30% of 1606 is 60, 160, 320, 480, $480. Oh no, that's backwards. We need 16 times 3 and some change. You need to be making 32, 40. $65,000, $70,000, $77,000 a month. Sorry, that's the way to do it. Okay,
what was the average? 16.
Right. So the formula here is X times 0.3 equals 1606. That's what you need to figure out. Solve for X.
Whoa. 1,600 divided by 0.102 would give you the percentage. 0.12 would give you 20% of it, right?
No. Where's 1.2 come from?
Times 0.2 would give you 20%.
No, well, see, okay, let's do it our way. We're used to 20%. What's 1,600 times 5?
I did 6,200.
What's 1,600 times 5?
8,000.
All right. So 8,000 would be your monthly needed income on a 20% of your income is going to housing. All right, so divide that by 4.
$400.
No, 1606 times 5.
Oh, 1,600 times 5.
Yeah.
Yep, 8,000.
Divided by 4.
Divided by 4, okay.
2,000.
2,000.
All right, so that's how much you need to make a week. Right, so divide that by 7.25.
1,450.
1,450?
14,050. Doing the math you just told me to do.
14,050. 14050?
That's what I got going off of what I thought you just told me the numbers to.
Okay, 2,000 divided by 7.25.
7.25. Oh, sorry, 275.
So our math at 20% says you need to do 275 hours a week to afford a $1,600 a month apartment. So if it's 30%, you would times 2 divide by, or whatever, you add half. So anyway, whatever. Either way, 170, 200-something hours a week. That's a ridiculous amount of effort to work or whatever.
All right.
And so I sent you a screenshot of this guy's post. I think I got it in my listing because Tyler shared his videos from the city council meeting where American Cannon said ask for more money thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got me thinking, and I don't think it's a new thought I've had per se, but it like I was thinking about it when I sent you it, and I said, I know it's a dead horse. I know this is something we've beaten to death. And the minimum wage is too low. People make more money and stuff like that. And so the question that kind of popped up as I was thinking about it is the ratio of affordability supposed to be based on minimum wage. Like the idea that if you are a minimum wage earner that lives alone, should you be able to afford an apartment? I don't know that I agree with that part of the premise. And I think that's where some of the disconnect in a lot of the conversation goes.
Why do you disagree with that premise?
Well, I mean, I think living in an apartment of your own, I would bet that off. Like, I think one of the things that kicked off when I was rereading it is, I'm going to guess rentcafe.com probably averages on medium to higher end apartments anyway. Lower end stuff probably doesn't rent on there, I would guess.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. And I think 1,600 is tall order. I saw a small 2-bedroom house for like 900 the other day.
Really?
Yeah. Which I was surprised to see it. I thought that was particularly low. But I mean, I think living alone as an adult, I think that's a little bit of a luxury. I don't think that's. I don't know. I just think the idea that like a minimum wage earner being able to afford their own place to live sounds a little tall to me.
Where do you expect a single middle wage person to live? How do you expect them to live?
A single minimum wage person to live? Well, I think that's part of the issue too. Is like I think there's and this might be some privilege showing or whatever, but I think if you're 35 years old and you're working for minimum wage, there's a problem. I don't know what that problem is. It could be job availability. It could be a lot of different things, but I would bet in Knox County, I wouldn't think that there's anybody. I would think I don't even think that the average starting pay is less than $10 an hour for most jobs in Knox County right now.
Well, I mean, I've done the math on. I mean, even say raise it up to. Assume we were doing it 7.25, but even raise it up to $10 an hour. Someone that's not even making minimum wage, literally making
well, just double it for easy math, and you can divide our week and our how many hours you need to work a week. It's still 110 hours a week.
Yeah.
At $15 an hour, it's still 110 hours a week. $110 a week.
Right.
Or 110 hours you'd have to work a week
to afford the average what they were talking about.
To afford it at 20% of your salary.
Right. Which I'm assuming, part of that kind of, as you kind of alluded to in the cafe whatever website. And it's something I've seen in a little bit of apartment shopping that I've done is there are a lot of apartments, especially some of the new ones that have popped up, are very nice, like, damn near like quote unquote luxury apartments. To where even their one bedrooms are priced very high, but you get, nice appliances and, quartz countertops and all this other bullshit.
Right. There's a workout room and
to where like part of it, I don't know if it's just, the availability of, how it's sourced, that many apartment complexes. I'm assuming at least more than half are going to be, quote unquote, nicer luxury apartments.
Right. Running the average up above what it is.
Right. Running the average up. Right.
Well, because, okay, so.
But even then, some of the cheaper ones are still inching up close to $1,000 a month.
I agree. And I mean, and again, I'm not trying to say it's not nothing, but,
right.
$1,000 a month would mean you need to make $4,000 $5,000. Fuck, get your calculator back out. I'm not doing math well right now.
How am I doing?
Well, I mean, if rent's $1,000 a month,
yep.
So times 5, that'd be $5,000. Would need to be your monthly income.
5,000. Yeah.
All right. So divide that by 4, so that's going to be $1,250.
$1,250 a week.
Right. And so $1,250 at $10 an hour would be 125 hours a week.
And that's just gross pay. That's without pre-tax.
Yeah, we don't have to start on taxes. I don't want to go down the taxes rabbit hole. But
just throwing it out there.
So, what's the difference? Median income, Knoxville. There you go. Look at you go. 23.9 for individual, 41.6 for a household. So Knox median. All right, thanks for tuning in, everybody, to listen to Sam and I work with our company.
Again, we talked about the whole mean and median as well.
24,000 years divided by 12 months, you would be making.
What is median?
$2,000 a month. Divide that by 4. It's $500 a week.
Do you remember what median is?
No, median is if you plot all of them in a line.
Yep, it's the very middle
median
point.
Median is the one between the top and the bottom.
Right, very middle point of all the points.
So that doesn't help us.
That's not necessarily the average. You want the mean.
That gives me the same one. Well, it's giving me the median again, even though I said average.
We'll put mean, M-A-N.
Don't be mean.
Make fucking Google do some fucking math for you.
The median household income.
God, why I can do median? Fuck this shit.
Search only for median. That one said $57,000.
What is a good household salary?
Household income is $57,000.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think Knoxville has a problem with that the majority of housing coming onto the market is out of range for the average.
I mean, like I said, I don't think that's a bad place to start.
What do you mean?
As essentially like the base level of what we'd expect, like a single person working a job, a quote unquote, like not necessarily like bottom level, but I mean a lower paying job. But can they afford to get just even a regular 1-bedroom apartment?
I mean, I think
should they be able to? Yeah. I think they should be able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment.
All right, so then if that's, I will agree with you in terms with the definition of what is a not, what is that job? So this is non-educated, right. Maybe high school diploma job.
Yeah. I mean, damn near just about anything in the service sector. I mean, a cashier at any box store, warehouse person,
direct support.
I mean, we've talked about like the quote unquote like McJobs, but even then, a lot of people would say that someone working at a fast food restaurant, shouldn't be making a whole lot of money, but at the same time, we want. Or we expect those people to be there, and we expect them to be paid, a shit amount of money. But at the same time, we expect them to be able to somehow live and still come into work and do what they're supposed to be doing, so we can have cheap burgers and fries. We don't think of what it actually costs them to still try to live.
Right.
Because not everybody has
Schnitzel
two
Kitchen.
people to share a 1-bedroom apartment with.
Schnitzel Kitchen in Belmore is $16 to $22 an hour. Okay, but
I mean, I get the idea of trying to semi-normalize a particular job and the expected pay rate. But I mean, you would also have to admit that some of these jobs I don't think are necessarily should be paid as high as they are, but it's because they are just less availability of them, like welders. I agree, it's a very high in demand job, but at the same time there aren't a lot out there, but they've increased the pay just because there's so few out there, and that because it's so needed.
That's the market doing what the market does, yeah. Because
I think but if we had more welders would be happy making $12 an hour just because there was an influx of them. Would that be the market doing what the market's doing?
Their happiness, the market doesn't care about their happiness. But if there are, if you go from having 5 to 50 available, the wages will come down, sure. Because the scarcity isn't there anymore. And I mean, as if I'm the shop foreman or whatever it is, and I'm hiring welders, and I have 20 guys standing at my door every morning wanting to work for me, and, at some point, sure, the wages will have to come down. There is the exchange of, well, is it worth the time and energy getting this new guy started for less money than it is to pay this guy what I'm already paying him? I mean, that's another equation that goes into the play, but
I guess that's more where I'd like to see like an industry standard. I don't know, it's really hard to implement, especially, across state lines and whatnot, but
long term, I mean, unless it's organized unless it's organized from labor, the long term is going to be damaging to the labor.
But I mean, commercially with products, you can have that price change of whether it's in high demand or not. But I mean, when you're talking about wages, you can't play with people's wages throughout the years as demand goes up and down. You can't be like, oh, well, sorry, you're in less demand now. I'm going to pay you less.
I find that. Okay, so what would have to happen for that demand of welders or whomever to drop? What would the other things that are in the market that would have to happen? A ton of them, like we already said that, a ton of them. For that demand to drop for welders, what would have to happen? So not the supply, so we're not talking about the supply. So
right.
Everything else being equal.
Higher levels of automation, maybe.
Sure. Or the demand for whatever is getting welded goes down.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, what I heard in my brain was, you can't mess with people's wages because the demand changes, but when that demand changes, ownership wages are in flux. Well, demand's down, so ownership's wages are down because we can't fuck with employees' wages because we need to keep them constant. So ownership should take the wage drop because demand has dropped. Both should, in my opinion.
Now, if demand drops, you may have to lay someone off, but I mean, I don't. And that's one thing I was kind of curious about as far as, labor standards, as far as, even within a company, if someone goes to a different position, if you can actually lower someone's pay or want someone is at a certain pay.
I shouldn't say it on air because I'm not 100%, but we've done it. We've had employees go from full to part-time, and we have a standard pay for part-time.
Right.
And for full-time, at least starting. And the couple of times that it's happened to us, it's been when it's been early enough for them working for us from going from part to full or full to part that they're still in their starting.
Yeah.
They're still in their starting bracket anyway. And so, yeah, you went to part-time, you go to starting part-time.
I've just never really known, like, if there was legal grounds to either, because I thought there was something that says you can't just legally lower someone's pay without, I guess, I'm assuming there's, a list of reasons. Obviously, if you go to a completely different department that is totally different, I can't expect you to be like, hey, you were a surgeon and now you're a janitor. We still got to pay you your surgeon salary.
Right, we're not going to continue paying you $250,000 a year,
right,
to mop the floors. But I don't know. I've never had to find the answer to that one because, I mean, they've some. I don't know. That's kind of one of the ones that's going on in Detroit, air quotes, right now, with the UAW situation. Is the union agreed to some cuts in raises during the pandemic to help keep costs down, so that they didn't fold in the pandemic bullshit.
Right. So they kind of like not prolonged, but I guess pushed out any kind of raises. Like, all right, they basically raises, but
they were contracted for like 6% annual cost of living increases,
right?
And said, hey, we're in this middle of this pandemic. We'll waive those automatic raises for now.
Yeah.
And then they never came back, and that's part of why they're about to strike again.
Gotcha. I hadn't heard about that one.
Yeah, it's happening. I don't know if the strike's happening, but
the Teamsters, I guess, are looking at Amazon now.
Yeah. Well, the Teamsters just won a big one with UPS.
Right. So I think they're trying to go off of that kind of like steamrolling train.
I mean, the market right now is very labor friendly,
right,
and therefore union friendly.
Right, and it's kind of in that same logic of UPS with all the online ordering and online delivery. That's one thing I guess like Amazon has kind of gone with, which probably it could, I don't know if it's necessarily going to necessarily help or hurt UPS and FedEx. I'm assuming they, to a certain extent, they would probably appreciate they weren't moving as much fucking Amazon shit as they were moving. But at the same time, they're losing a little bit of profit on that. I don't know whether it was, worth the headache of moving that much Amazon shit through their system. Because a lot of Amazon stuff was relying upon the Postal Service to kind of do that last leg. That's one like crazy thing about working in like a shipping department at times. You kind of see kind of like the UPS, I think they call it like SureShip or something. But it's like their cheaper version of UPS, where UPS does most of the moving. Right. But that very last leg, they have the Postal Service that runs more rural routes that UPS and FedEx don't deliver to. They're like, oh, hey, Mr. Mail Person, you're going out that way. Take it there. Since you're going that way,
right? Like, I mean, Amazon's all contract too, and so I'm curious how that's
20 tires out to Jim Bob down at his farm. It's like I drive a mail truck, man. I don't have room for 20 tires, let alone 20 tractor tires.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
But it's like that same thought of logistics, basically.
I mean, I understand why you would do that as a UPS or a FedEx. The Postal Service is more or less mandated to go to every house every day.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, they're damn near required.
I mean, if nothing else, that is their function.
Right. They're supposed to be our United States Postal Service.
Right, which I still don't quite understand their relationship governmentally. I think it's
just something that's been.
I think it's like a federal utility is the way they function.
Right. Yeah.
Like, not dissimilar to KUB.
That's the way it's
here.
always been. You know, I can't remember the name of that movie that Kevin Costner was in about.
Like The Postman.
The Postman. Yeah.
My wife loves that movie. I don't hate it.
I've actually watched all of it.
I don't hate it, but it's not like it doesn't. I think she's got a thing for Kevin.
But I mean, that was maybe like 150 years ago. So I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we were literally relying upon like horses to carry like bags of mail and like
I
drop
think we're
them
talking about a different movie then. The Kevin Costner Postman movie is like a post-apocalyptic. Like he's the last postman that survived like the nuclear holocaust.
Oh, I always thought it was set in like the 1800s.
No, I'm sorry, take it back. He is a con artist pretending to be the last postman because like all these little communes that have set up around the country
okay.
won't let people in.
I guess that shows you I've never actually seen the movie. I was about to say, like, I think I may have seen like bits and pieces of it. I remember seeing like the trailer for it. Okay, yeah. I always assumed it was actually set in like the 1850s back when we had like the whatever riders, the
Pony Express.
Yeah, the Pony Express. Yeah.
Anyway, so back to where we started with this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I do think it's a good place to start the conversation, but I don't know the answer. Like, I don't know. I don't know the question either, I guess.
Right.
You know,
I mean, I think it's where you have to stop and look at it. It's like, what would we expect like I said, you know, a single person that's working, you know, a low to even like medium wage job. How do we expect them to be able to live a quote unquote decent life and not just be constantly struggling?
Well, I think number one, I think that
the common thing is like, oh, well, you should just get a better job. But at the same time,
I think that
we have that expectation of there's going to be those people out there that are working these, you know.
Well, I think
jobs.
Well, I think one of the things at play is I think there's a societal standard for coupling. I think that is a. With this a conversation in mind, I think that is part of. Yeah, I think that's part of the post 50s, 60s, and 70s. Especially especially through something like the feminist movement and stuff like that, where, you know, we had the introduction of women into the labor force in a larger quantity that brought demand up for work because we had more workers because more women were trying to get jobs and stuff like that. And so, like, you know, we joke about like that picturesque past when you used to have the dad went to work and mom stayed home and blah, 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 blah. That doesn't really exist anymore, even on the higher end paying jobs, people to raise a family and do all that kind of stuff. But I think that's part A. I think there is an ingrained part of the U.S. system that says coupling is required.
I don't see that.
And you should be pulling resources. You don't think that's something that exists in the larger systems at play, or you don't see that as... Why do you say that?
I mean, I can see it as encouraging it as far as like a tax break when you file, you know, as a married couple. You know, a little bit of a tax break versus, well, no, actually, you pay better. You get more money, I think, if you file individually. Like when I was married, like the first year we were married, we filed individually.
It depends, but yeah.
Yeah, it depends on
it just depends on
tax bracket,
income and situation and stuff like that, and
right.
You know,
but I mean,
especially nowadays when like everybody's fucking divorced and stuff too, and like custody is an issue in your taxes.
Right,
is filing individually get you, especially with custody stuff.
All right, and outside of that, I don't see how the federal government, I guess, incentivizes coupling. Off the top of my head,
I mean, I think the fact that you can't afford to have a place to live without having a roommate of some sort, if you're on the lower echelon of things.
Do you mean coupling is relationship, or coupling is like finding someone else you can just live with?
I mean, I think coupling is in relationship.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. Okay,
is the broader picture of it, but I think a working reality around it is some sort of 2 to foursome of combined resources to survive this system.
I can't get behind that thought that they, I guess, quote unquote, government would be complacent upon us having there be a higher standard of, or a higher cost of living, to let that arbitrarily encourage people to find someone just so they can find a place to live. I mean, that's just asking for a divorce of sorts.
Okay, I get what you're saying, but all right, how does the federal government make money?
Multitude of ways.
I mean, number 1A is income tax. I mean, it's the majority of their...
Is it?
I believe that's the majority of their budget.
I don't know.
Okay. So...
Never looked at a federal income.
Either way. Well, not either way. I believe it's not an insignificant sum if it's not the majority, which I believe is the majority.
I would doubt, but I don't know.
What do you think the majority would be if it's not income tax?
Just general taxes. I mean, hell, our sales tax is 9.25%. What is our income tax?
I'm sorry.
Our income tax ain't going to shit.
You're right. I asked a poor question. No, I didn't. I said federal government. Did I say federal government? I meant federal government. How does the federal government make most of their money?
Yeah, you said federal.
Okay. They don't make anything off of sales tax. Sales tax is state of Tennessee. Property tax is your local municipality.
We keep everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we've talked about it before. Tennessee is like the number.
The county sends it up to Tennessee, but I didn't think there was another, I didn't know if there was another.
Right, Tennessee doesn't kick shit. Like, we take more from the federal government than almost any other state.
Okay.
So for the federal government's sake, income tax is the winner. What is the non-military? What is the largest expense in federal government?
Entitlements.
Exactly. So if you're working enough to not be entitled and paying in because you have a job, you're the perfect citizen to them. Maybe not the perfect citizen, but you're a proper. That's the citizen they want. A citizen good enough that is working and is paying income tax, but makes enough money to not be eligible for entitlement. Because it's income without outgoing for the federal government's sake. Just on a purely economic, dollars and cents tax incentive kind of way. Now, other things in play and this, that, and the other to the side. But just in a pure, like the most simplistic state. So, because again, I would think that they want us to be, working and busy doing shit and not paying attention to the stuff they're doing. And that's when I get the more conspiratorial version of all my craziness. And so to me, I think that is a net win for the federal government, at least. And I think for the state of Tennessee too, because the state of Tennessee doesn't care what you make or how you pay as long as you're buying shit. Because I love this. I love the sales tax only thing for the state of Tennessee. I love it. I think it's great. But if the economy gets bad, the state of Tennessee is in a lot of trouble. But I'd rather the state of Tennessee be in trouble than me individually. And that's the way that Tennessee has it set up. And I kind of like it that way. What are you looking at?
I was trying to see if I can figure out what the stats you were talking about of what actually is coming in and from where.
Oh, federal income?
I think most of this is like, when I look for budget, it's outgoing, basically.
Right.
It's budget spending.
I mean, yeah, that or the government.
I guess budget might be the wrong word. I'm just trying to figure out what our federal income is.
Yes,
federal income.
Majority of the federal revenue comes from individual and corporate income taxes as well as social insurance taxes, such as Social Security.
Yeah, it's part of those. Right, would be your federal taxes.
Who is the largest contributor to the federal budget? Individual income taxes. This is from the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. Damn, son, your parents didn't like you very much. Hey, Peter, are you Peter's son? Yes, sir. My name's Peter Peterson, because Peter's my dad, and I'm Peter.
The fourth. We just can't give it up.
We just love our Peter Petersons. Yeah. But, so I think I think there is. I think there's a societal push towards putting people being in a position to make enough money to pay income tax, but not be eligible to take from. And I think and maybe that's maybe I'm inferring coupling and group living from that.
I mean, I could see that being a valid goal, essentially, to have citizens that are making money that are able to, bring money back into the tax coffers, but aren't
taking out for at least entitlement's sake,
right,
like they're taking out because we're spending
whatever.
Right, because we're spending $1 million on road work as the federal government, and that's how we're spending the money back on that individual. But that's it. We're not spending it on food stamps or any of the other welfare programs available. And so, I think that's a good chunk. I think that's a good chunk of the game, because another thing too is especially if you're on the lower end of the bracket, you don't have time to pay attention. You don't have energy to pay attention to all the shit that I complain about, at least, and what's going on. You don't have time to pay attention to the however many $1 trillion the Pentagon can't account for. You don't have time to really pay attention, and I mean this in the most derogatory way I could say it. You don't have time to pay attention to how fucked up Trump is. You don't have time to pay attention to how fucked up Biden is. You don't have time. You just got to deal with the options you have when they're finally presented in front of you, if you bother getting out to go vote.
I can't remember last time we looked up the percentage of people that are making below that. Like, I want to say it's a good chunk of the U.S. population is essentially like below minimum wage, basically.
Well, used to be line.
Yeah, I couldn't even say below or necessarily like poverty line, but are at probably $30,000 or less a year.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Going back to the restarting the same conversation again. I don't disagree with you. I think it is a good conversation to have. Should somebody, I think if you're a professional tradesman of some sort, doing HVAC, plumbing, things like that, you should be able to pay your bills. You should be able to have a decent, and I think decent's a loose term, but I think you should be able to afford an average to below average domicile for yourself as a single individual. The question, I guess, realistically is, should you be able to afford to raise a family on just you? And I don't know the answer to that either. I don't know. Maybe that is the good number.
That's
maybe
a little bit harder question to ask.
Maybe we should go back to that. Minimum wage should be able to afford an apartment by themselves. They shouldn't be able to afford like a luxury place, but they should be able to afford a below average shithole to get them through as they race through the ranks of whatever employee they have. And so as their salary goes up, they can maybe afford to meet somebody and start a family. Because I do think
that was kind of my thought. It's like I think it's a good starting point. Like a single person with a quote unquote average salary, I think should be able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment. I mean, obviously not a luxury, with pools and amenities and all that like extra bullshit. But I mean, just a standard, not fucking just bed bug and roach infested shithole apartment complex. But I mean, a halfway decent.
All right, I think you got me.
Single bedroom. I mean, even a studio. I mean, a lot of places just have studios. Like,
but I think
everything's all in one room, and you got a kitchen. And that's it.
I mean, I had one for like $300 a month when I was a kid.
Yeah,
the $360 a month studio apartment.
I mean, I think one of the last times I looked,
I cooked in anything but their microwave once in the year that I held that place.
Yeah. And one place, an apartment complex that has been there a long time and has changed names a few times. I think their studio was up to close to like $800 or $850.
Yeah, that's a lot for.
And a place that I've known many of places that have moved into, and then you pretty much like they just throw another layer of paint to where all the corners around the
everything's kind of rounded.
Everything's rounded.
Stud finder doesn't work because there's an inch of paint between between you and the drywall.
You got black mold, we'll just paint right over that. That was never there.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I kind of get it.
I mean, like I said, I know I've said it 100 times, but I kind of go back to is how do we as Americans expect those people to live?
Right. Well, because I think the other side too, going back to like the government incentive program, is like you've got to have, because I get procreation is a requirement. We need it as a country, not as a society per se, but as a country. For the country to continue to exist, we have to have another generation, and so procreation is a requirement. It just is.
Not necessarily.
I mean, immigration is the only other option.
Right. A lot of people want to come to America.
Yeah, but they're not white, so they don't count.
For some people, sure.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I don't know.
They took our jobs.
But I mean, but again, that's part of the deal because when I'm the rich piece of the ruling class that I'm going to hand over my lordship to my kids, they need to have somebody to lord over. I can't make it so hard that the plebs don't bother procreating, because then the plebs' kids can't serve my kids.
It's happened in a few countries.
Yeah,
that are running into.
China's having that problem right now.
China, Japan, Germany. I mean, some major superpowers. I don't know how the U.S. is looking.
I think some recent studies and stuff have shown that we're starting a downward trend. It's not in like shit point yet, but we're still. I mean, the baby boomers are still around; they won't die off yet, right. And that's an issue.
And there was one guy, I think I sent you a link of his.
It's a really big issue for us because it makes the functionality of Social Security even harder for us, because I believe the generation mathematically, which would be like,
shit, they told us like 15 years ago that we probably weren't going to have Social Security when
I'm
we
not
went to
planning
retire.
On it. I'm trying not to plan on it.
Right.
But like, so it should be your grandkids' generation is the one that's most likely to pay your retirement.
Huh.
And so because like I'm at the point where I'm kind of in a tweener stage. My kids aren't old enough to have kids yet. And so like, so I'm 41. So like the 50, 55-year-old, so like Jesse and Scott, like they're in the spot where...
Why you got to call them out?
Because they're the only people I know that are like 50. They were talking about on their show today, they said something about their age. Because the average early voter so far is 55 plus. Like the overwhelming majority of people that have voted in early voting in the city of Knoxville are 55 plus. Anyway, so the math's already kind of hinting towards that generation is going to be smaller than currently the 50 to 60-year-old generation right now, which means they're going to have a hard time with inflation collecting enough from Social Security to keep the Social Security thing running. Between inflation and population loss.
All right.
I mean, people need to work. I mean, that's just the thing. I don't disagree with that. And we need to reevaluate what work is and how much we should be paying for it. But I think we as Americans we're so used to cheap.
Right, but we say that, but at the same time, many, I assume yourself included, would argue, what's the demand for it? Should that be a higher paying job? Should it be paid higher just because there's a higher demand for it?
Right. If there's no demand for the job, or better yet, if there's no, if there's a multitude of, if there's decent demand for the job, but the supply is outrageous, it should be a lower paying job. That's just the reality of things. Why would I pay you $20 an hour when I could pay somebody else $15?
I mean, I get that sentiment.
Now, the question is, does the price of the thing that on the other side change because I'm paying less? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Right.
It certainly gives me more room as an owner to maybe hire somebody else. So I have another person working.
Right. I mean, maybe me as a skeptical person, hire an HVAC person that's charging $25 an hour versus someone that's charging $10 an hour. I'm going to wonder if that $10 an hour person is going to do as good of a job, or if they were offering that rate just to guarantee them a job.
Exactly. And you don't know that. And I guess part of the difference in the way you illustrated that's pretty good, because I think part of the difference in the way we look...
But the market will figure that out, right? And people will just stop using that person that's only charging $10. Right?
I mean, there are people that I've hired to do work that have done poor work that I won't hire again.
Right.
And if somebody asks me, do you know a good whatever? I'll say, no, but I know a not good whatever.
Right.
Like there's an electrical company that if you were to ask me, I've got 2 that I would say no to and 3 that I would tell you are good because of my experience with them.
And at recent times with enough digging, you can find people like yourself that, have had tried to pass along that kind of advice. But for the most part, most people that are looking around and are, strapped for money and trying to save a few dollars are probably still going to go for that.
And if your dad is worth a shit, he would have told you get what you pay for. So be careful. But I also one of my electricians in the list was the second most expensive of, and he would be the last one that I would ever send to anybody.
Right.
And so the amount of their charging versus the work done, it didn't equate anyway.
But
I think what's super interesting about how you illustrated that is not how I'm thinking about it when we're talking about this. I'm not thinking about it as a consumer hiring somebody to do the work. I'm thinking about it as an owner-manager hiring somebody who works for me. Because I think the line in the specific line in that, because, you know, if I am Barbarian Electrical Company, if we're going to stick with the electricals, I do have a reputation. I have a reputation to uphold. If I have a reputation to be good, and I've got 100 guys knocking on my door trying to work for me, I'm not going to hire a $10 an hour guy if I'm not sure that $10 an hour guy is going to keep my reputation up. And I'm going to find out real quickly whether that $10 an hour guy is going to keep my reputation good and clean, steady, and I'm going to fire him. I am to me, I, as the business, am the one that's actually the safeguard for you, the customer. Because I'm trying to protect my reputation. The individual who's doing the work is unimportant. I'm going to hire the individual that's going to do the job right because I have my reputation to keep. Where you're thinking about it more of hiring individuals as a consumer than I am. I'm good. Does that make sense as far as the difference in perspective?
Yeah, but at the same time, I guess maybe it's just me being more of a skeptical person.
Because I
also think that it's, especially nowadays, it's not hard to dissolve that business and restart anew under a different name. Like I said, you get a bad reference, bad Google, Yelp reviews.
Right, but you're doing the math on, all right, so I got some bad shit that I got to run away from. Is it going to cost me more to start over or rehab my current name? That's a secondary issue. Because I'm looking at it like McDonald's. I'm looking at it I'm thinking about jobs that if you have a pulse, I should be able to train you to do this job. And I'll find out real quick if you're incapable of flipping a burger or assembling a Big Mac.
Right.
That's how I'm looking at it.
I mean, some of this can take time.
Sure, an electrician's one of those. And if I'm the electrician and I'm hiring if I'm the electrician company and I'm hiring electricians, I'm training you, not necessarily on electrical work. I'm gonna say, right. Do you know how to do electrical work? And you're gonna tell me yes, and you're gonna tell me different things that you should know. But I'm still gonna stand next to you, or I'm gonna take my senior most guy and stick you with him for at least a couple weeks before I let you out to roam the lands free with my name on your shirt.
You would hope, yeah.
You know, and so I think the difference in the way we view it, I guess maybe this is my rosy view of business at large, is that they have a goal to protect their name. The business does. The individual might not. I mean, I've had plenty of employees that I've had to fire over time.
I thought a business's goal was to make money.
Sure, and you do that by having a good reputation or having a shitty reputation and just piling through it.
Good reputation doesn't always denote profitability.
No, it doesn't. But it's a game that you play as an owner constantly.
Right.
Like, is this person good at their job? Yes. Are they good for my company? That's a different question.
So I'm conflating different arguments. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead.
But no, on that thought too, it's like there are people that we have recently fired who were pretty good. They had a good thing going and they had a good repertoire and our customers really liked them. But they had problems. And we tried to look those over. We tried to train out those issues and they just wouldn't stick and we couldn't stick with it. And so it's like, you know, were they good at the job? Were they capable? But we couldn't have them. Now, could we just stuck with them and the problems weren't enough to offset whatever? But it's like, no, we have a reputation with all. We're going to keep our reputation clean rather than deal with the situation that's over here. Because even though it's going to cost us more in the short term, in the long term, it should make us more money. Because the reputation is more important than the dollar today. Because the reputation is going to make the dollar tomorrow. Or the $5 tomorrow, I guess maybe would be a better way to... Or at least that's the intent. Right. I can't guarantee the dollars tomorrow. And so maybe it's a bird in the hand thing. Maybe I should have kept the guy just to keep making a couple bucks today and deal with the shortcomings and hope that they're not enough to give me a negative tomorrow.
Well, I mean, in this day and age...
All right, Grandpa.
I know. I mean, it's kind of hard to, I guess, come back from some of those negative reviews.
It is.
I talked about it before. When I worked at CarMax, where I was kind of, graded upon my like customer scores, like it was random surveys that were sent out that I was already double fucked that it was like a 5-star rating. Which,
most places, most survey
4 sounds great, but 4 is
not
really all that great.
Most companies that do those, if it's a 5-point review, it's either 5 or 0 as far as the company cares.
Right.
There is no 1, 2, 3, or 4.
There's
5 or not.
But it's that general adage that more often than not, people are more inclined to go in and put in a bad review versus go in, if they actually had a good experience, to make the effort to go in and put in a good review.
And I think that's a failure on the business's part, because over time they've lost good employees because of the way they do the review system.
It's possible, but I mean, just in a general business's repertoire, you essentially have Yelp, Google, and a couple other sites that people can go on and give reviews to where for the most part those are it could be bad reviews.
I've had I went through a whole big process with Google because somebody was just wrong. They were at the wrong place. They were talking about they bought, like, their complaint was they gave us a 0 star. These guys are thieves. I bought this thing, and they said what it was from them a week ago. It's like, we never sold that thing.
Right.
And I was like, please take this review down. It's killing our star rating, because at the time it was earlier in our careers. And I don't know this, but I think it was one of a shop down the street. I think they were doing it on purpose to try to damage our Google reputation.
Right, it's one thing that's not hard to do. I mean, with the right know-how and the right connections, you can have 100,000 bots go in there and put in 1-star reviews.
Sure.
This place sucks.
And you can do some real damage.
This place sucks.
Yeah,
this place is
you really can. Yeah. And it's unfortunate, and I don't know how to fix that, because I don't think it helps. People use it, but I don't think
it... going back to, like, the reputation thing, like you said.
Well,
it's not hard to trash a reputation,
but it depends on the industry.
It's an uphill battle to try to rebuild that reputation.
It isn't.
If you want to base your...
I agree with you, but it is if you're going to get... If you're talking about cold call blind sales versus referral sales. That's it, because it depends on the industry. Like, I think for a restaurant or something like that just opened, like, you just opened a restaurant around the street. We just opened a restaurant. Bad reviews on there are a problem, because people are going to look at reviews going to a restaurant.
Right. If they're looking for a place they haven't been to before.
Right. But I think with a lot of industries, people say, did you get one of these? Have you ever bought one of these? They ask friends, they ask family about stuff. And so that reputation is going to supersede tenfold to whatever your Google review is. If I told you to use Billy Bob's Electrical Company, and you're like, man, I looked him up on Google and they have a 1-star and there's a bunch of complaints about him. It's like, dude, came out, he did this job, he did great. You don't care about their 1-star reviews on Google. I told you, and you trust me.
Right.
That's a much bigger thing. But I agree. Like, I think the whole Google stars and the Yelp and stuff like that, because especially Google's the only one that... Google's the best, I guess, but, like, Yelp's problematic. Because Yelp, if you're not a paying business on Yelp, as far as, like, you're managing your own listing, you have nothing. You have no say. Yelp doesn't give a shit about you. Yelp pushes you down in ratings, even if you're a 5-star.
You're just a placeholder for them as a business,
right? You're just you're just completing their listings.
Yeah.
So if you go on Yelp and search for a vape shop, we're going to be way the fuck down on the listing, because we don't pay for Yelp. We don't advertise on Yelp. We don't use them as a service for our company.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter what our reviews are anyway. But customers don't know that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shitty, that's just kind of one of those, like, smoke and mirrors games that a lot of different things that go on every day that are problematic.
Yeah.
Because that's the same with credit card companies to me. I would bet you that if somebody actually went out and surveyed it, that the majority of people don't realize how much more they're paying for a thing because of the absolute domination of credit card purchases across the board. Nobody uses cash anymore. Credit cards cost money for the vendor or for the shop that you're going to shop at, and so they roll in some. They changed the law on it recently, but most businesses just eat it, 3 to 15%, depending on who you are and what you do and stuff like that.
All right.
But most companies just eat that, and they just take it off it just comes off the bottom line. And so at some point, when they're setting the price of their goods, they're knocking up their price of their goods 5% to offset that 3% to 5% to 7%. At some point, you're going to start. You have to start offsetting that in your pricing.
All right.
And so, I mean, like I think at our newest store, I think we're 72% credit card sales. Every dollar we bring in, 72 cents of that is off credit cards.
Becoming more common.
Yeah, and it's real problematic because we're a bar, and so like bartenders take home cash tips. We have nights we don't have cash. Like we literally have like $50 in cash sales, and they have $100 in tips.
Yeah,
and so like I'm pulling money out of my wallet so they can get their cash tips, and then I'll take it out of the bank later. It's a mess, no doubt on that part of it. But I think that's a cost that we consumers have just gotten are blind to as far as understanding what that is doing to our pay or to the cost of the things we're buying. We're paying more for our stuff because of how much we like to use credit cards. The credit card companies are like, well, you're getting 1.5% back or 1% back for every dollar you spend.
Right. Because it sounds good when you hear it.
Right. You're paying 10% more for everything you buy.
Right.
But you're getting 1% back. All right, let's go to Kansas.
All right.
It's fucking crazy. So where exactly is it in Kansas? It's some little podunky just outside of Kansas City, right?
Yeah, it was
Marion County Courthouse.
Like 2,000 or 3,000 people town.
Marion, Kansas. There's a newspaper in Marion, Kansas called the Marion County Record. A dude, his mom bought it a couple of years back because some, Gannett style conglomerate was coming in to try to buy it from the old version.
Are you sure? I think it said they've owned this for a long time.
I mean, the paper consolidation has been going on for a long time. When did Gannett buy News Sentinel?
I'm not disputing. I'm sorry. I thought I read in this story that they had owned this paper for many years.
I don't know. That's just part of the story that I'd heard, not in the one that we're reading right here. Oh, hey, by the way, I booked a hotel in Atlanta. Guess why my ads are all hotels? I booked it on Priceline, too. You should know better. Anyway, so the local sheriff's office raided the offices of this newspaper because... I'm still not clear on the because.
I believe if I read it correctly, and if I can remember correctly, there was, I think it was an allegation that ended up being like a restaurant owner who, I think the article I sent you had to do with a DUI as well, but it had to do with like a restaurant owner that I guess it had some DUI, that there was some kind of connection of her driving while her license was supposed to be suspended. And I think if I read it correctly, there was somebody in the town that let either like the local prosecutor or the sheriff's department, but also this newspaper say like, hey, there's this local like restaurant owner that has had a DUI. Her license was suspended, and she's been talking about driving around while her license has been suspended. Well, she's supposed to be, have her license suspended or have a restricted license.
Right, but
then they didn't run a story on it. But then I think that's where the raid came, was the woman who I guess thought that the newspaper illegally accessed her records to find this out.
Even though it's public record, but...
Right. Which I think in the story, they say that they only verified the story, but they never ran that story about this business owner. But I believe that was how this raid came to happen, was it was alleged that this newspaper had committed, what do they call it? I guess identity theft, basically.
Right. The restaurateur Carrie Newell accused the paper of illegally obtaining her records. But the paper received the information about Newell from a separate source, independently verified with the Kansas Department of Revenue Division of Vehicles website.
And decided not to publish it. Yeah.
The search warrant specifically allowed officers to confiscate documents and records pertaining to the identity theft of Carrie Newell. So the question is like, okay, so this restaurateur was freaking out because they were looking into her driving on a suspended license, basically, and were maybe going to run a story on it, and didn't want it run. And so her solution to this was to file a complaint saying that they're stealing my identity.
The solution, or maybe she truly had it in her mind that they did something nefarious to find this out.
Okay, so,
I don't know,
but her ignorance of the law does not.
I guess she basically went to the police department and accused them of identity theft or stealing her records somehow or hacking into her
again,
records.
But ignorance of the law does not presume innocence from the law. Being a whole withstanding thing, but the law itself, the sheriff's office, okay, ma'am, we will look into this. I'd be like, how do you get to the point where we're looking into this, goes into a search warrant with a DUI-friendly judge who signs off on the search warrant? We'll stick on that in a second. But, like, I don't understand how the sheriff gets to the raid part. Like, why would you do that? Like, why? Like, okay, some random citizen, potentially. I don't know if they're, like, to me it feels like there's something, like this restaurateur has some connection to the local government or the sheriff's office or something like that to help push this through.
It's possible. Basically, it takes the, I'm assuming it would take that district attorney putting forth some kind of search warrant, or at least,
the cops can ask for it.
The police warrant could go to a judge to ask for a warrant with, presumably enough evidence to suppose that this crime did happen.
Right, but I mean, like, I don't know the procedure of any police office across the country. I don't know how it works, but I would assume.
I mean, generally for
there's a
search warrant,
somewhere.
You have to have probable cause or some kind of reason if you're going to have a judge sign off on a search warrant for a premises and
that's what I want to know.
A number of materials.
That's what I'd like to know. Like,
most judges aren't going to sign off on that unless there is a reason.
What probable cause could you possibly have to sign off on that?
Right.
Or to ask for that. Forget the sign off on it. I get the sign off on it part because the judge who apparently signed off on it has multiple DUIs themselves. And so it was potentially sympathetic to the plight of said restaurateur. But
it could be. I mean,
it should be that hard to check. Like, so,
but it was presented as there was no other way that they could have found, which I would like to think a judge would know that, like, hey, some of this stuff is publicly accessible. But I don't know if it was simply.
Well, they didn't even publish it, so they don't even know what they found.
True.
So the investigation is, okay, this person's accusing you of identity theft. What are you guys doing? Well, we were looking at a story. We got a tip that she had multiple DUIs and is driving on a suspended license, and we were looking at maybe running a story on it. And so we verified with the state, alcoholic whatever vehicles division, that she does have a suspended license. Okay, so who did you talk to at the state? Cool, we'll go check that. And that person says, yeah, they looked into that. Where's the identity? Like, I don't understand.
I don't know if she was able to, convince the police department that there was, something more to the story, and they just.
I guess my complaint.
They took her at her word, which, I mean, most police should be able to do with someone that's coming in with a complaint. They should be able to take them at their word.
Sure, but what you take their word and verify it,
right?
And so, step one of verifying it would be ask the accuser, to me, maybe not specifically and be super direct about it, but hey, we got a complaint from this person. I'm not telling you what it is. We got a complaint from this person that you've been meddling in their shit. What do you have to say for that?
Yeah.
The newspaper says this is a story we're looking at maybe running. We're not sure yet. Okay, let's verify some parts and pieces.
I wish I would have told you earlier. It was a good thing to ask Scott and Jesse how they thought about this. Cause
I've talked to
that's been the bigger story that I've seen throughout the U.S. is as far as a police force raiding a newspaper.
Yeah. Well, one of the things Jesse did say, what it said, is like the audacity of it. Sure, it's a small town sheriff in Kansas or whatever, but you got to know that you're not going to get away with this. In this day and age with social media and stuff like that, the story's going to get out.
Yeah, apparently it's like the state feds, and I think maybe like the national feds are already looking into this.
Yeah, so it's not like you're going to get it. Like, there's no way you're getting away with it. And at any point,
they thought they may be able to.
At any point, you've got to be a little bit more cautious with journalism. You just have to. Journalists get a little bit more leeway in some of the, in some legal stuff.
I mean, there's a lot of stories that fall through the cracks. I mean, they thought that it would just be another story that fell through the cracks.
Sure, story that falls through the cracks here or there, but there's no way it's not going to get up to the Kansas Bureau of Investigation or the FBI level of stuff. There's no way. Like that. Like I can't. I would think that.
I mean, if you're
the sheriff and you're staring down the barrel of this and you're thinking about it, or if you're the judge, you're thinking about this, you're like,
right. But if you went so far as to think that this restaurant owner had some local ties, there's ways around that. Like I said, with a small town, probably a police force of 5 to 10 people.
I don't know. I just don't. The only way you think you're getting away with it is because it's a small paper, because it's not attached to a Gannett or one of these big boys that has the legal team or whatever. That's the only way you're thinking you're going to get away with it. But even in that, there is enough independent journalism that exists at this point that's big that's going to find it. There's no way that a Breaking Points, for example, isn't going to get a hold of this story.
It's possible.
I mean, they did 3 segments on it so far.
Gotcha.
But it's just not. I don't think.
Right, but I mean,
it's a gamble. Okay, it is a single square on the roulette table gamble. It's a 36-1 at best.
I don't know about that. That'll be my token phrase for the night. But in this day and age, it's. In the 24-hour news cycle.
You got to say, again, but it's not about the news cycle. It's about the legal cycle. And that's what I'm
But it's not about the legal cycle. It's about the news cycle. It's about how many random stories are going out and they just happen to get picked up. That happen to, catch a little bit of traction.
But I would say, okay. But even
this story happened to probably get...
random crazy news cycle that it is, somebody in independent journalism who would be a potential victim in the same set of circumstances is going to see that and understand the legalities of that and put that tip into at least the Kansas State, if not the FBI.
I mean, at the same time...
And then there's a legal obligation, like the sheriff, to follow up on it and to put some real effort into looking into it. Unless you're an Amelia Parker character, which complains about everything.
At the same time, it's easier to hide, but at the same time, it is a little bit easier to then spread this stuff along to people.
I think the idea that
I think we're in that awesome dichotomy of technology is
sure.
There's so much
going on. It's
around,
hard to see anything.
But it's saying it's so much easier to
see it,
pass along something to someone else, and then have it go viral.
I mean, so I guess the real question is, the reality of the question is, did the real question is, did the sheriff's office not think they were trying to get away with anything? Did they just think this was fine?
Like I said, I think the latest story was they had to give back a whole bunch of shit.
They killed his mom.
I think it was yesterday that they were finally able to actually put out a paper.
I mean, I don't know. I guess this is my
you can make the argument
inconsistency
that
phrase is you should
the stress of. I mean,
you should be better. They should be better. They should be more careful. If you're going to cross a line, you should be more careful.
Less. I mean, I would like to think they should be more or less stressful in the rating process of it. Because apparently, I think one of the stories I read, talked about them taking her Alexa and all this other stuff that she'd been using kind of throughout her day-to-day life. But she just happened to be a co-owner of the paper, and they seized pretty much. I guess the paper said, seized most electronics devices that are associated and owned by the newspaper. But some of that stuff, I guess, was
so anything
personal
the owner
stuff
owns,
at home.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything the owner owns, the paper owns.
Right. And I could definitely agree that the stress of a raid and, her newspaper's, prestige being questioned.
All right, so here's the quote that I just pulled up while you're looking at it. So Jeff Kossoff, a law professor at the U.S. Navy Academy who specialized in First Amendment, said he was surprised the county judge found the sufficient probable cause to sign off on a search warrant. A whole lot more of this to be a correct decision. Can't imagine a scenario in which all of these other protections would be overcome to allow a raid of a newsroom.
Yeah.
And so
that's what I've seen as the bigger story. Not to discount, this woman's death.
No, it's a failure. It's a failure of multiple offices. Sheriff's office for even pretending to ask for it, and then a judge for signing off on it. Like, there's no.
I don't know exactly. I read a little bit on it. I can't remember the actual legal grounds upon a newsroom and stories of what exactly they would have to turn over if the police came in with a subpoena for a certain story. I would assume it would have to be more directive about a particular files.
I mean, it's the Julian Assange case. The Julian Assange case is at least the case according to the federal government is that he himself was active in the theft of and cover up of the theft of classified information. That's the case against Julian Assange. It's not that he published or didn't publish, because he has the right to publish it. He doesn't have the right to go steal it himself or be part of the theft. So, like, if my neighbor walks in the door and hands me a piece of paper that's got a Pentagon seal on it and says top secret and all sorts of information, I am legally allowed to share that information. Now, I would be morally bound to try to verify it before I share it, but I'm legally allowed to put that out as a person in the media, and that's a joke in and of itself. And I'm using big old air quotes for those of you who can't see me right now. But I'm legally allowed to put that out as a media person, as a journalist of sorts. Even if it says clearly classified top secret, President's eyes only, stamped on the piece of paper.
Right.
I didn't steal it. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm allowed to share that information as a journalist. There's no world where that can't be allowed under the First Amendment privileges. Now, did I pay my neighbor to steal it? That's where it gets a little gray. Did I assist in the process of them stealing it? Did I fund their operation to go get that piece of paper? Then it becomes a little bit more of a treasonous act, and therefore a crime.
My only little pushback is that if they could prove that you knew that what you were looking at was sensitive, that you knew that President's eyes only, like what that meant, I think only then could it then, if you
I don't think so. I think
I think they would have to prove that you knew, like I said, like kind of what that meant or the level of secrecy that those supposed classified or DNI,
for
whatever.
First Amendment journalism standards, I don't think it matters. Now, do I have a moral responsibility to maybe not tell people where our troops are hanging out?
I think they could prove intent, but like I said, they would have to prove that you had knowledge that what you were looking at was, quote unquote, sensitive material.
I don't think so. I really don't think so, legally speaking. Now, would that matter in the real world? Probably not. I'd probably go to jail for a long time.
But I don't think there's I think there's a certain level where you can't play dumb at that.
I'm not pleading dumb. I knew it was a secret, and I told everybody. It's not a secret.
That's what I'm saying. And at that level, I think that
it's not a secret that I'm required to keep. I didn't make any oath to keep said secret. I'm not obligated to whatever secret society group thing says this thing is a secret.
No, they couldn't prosecute you for signing something saying you would not disseminate that, but that is not to say they couldn't prosecute you for disseminating said document, knowing that you knew it was that sensitive, and then doing so. That's where I'm pretty damn sure they could find you criminally liable.
I don't think so.
How not?
I mean, maybe because I'm not an actual
knowing
journalist.
That it was sensitive material,
sure.
Disseminated it. How is that not a crime?
Because I'm not obligated to the sensitivity of that. I'm not.
How are you not? Are you a U.S. citizen?
Sure.
Okay. That makes you liable for it. I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so. I disagree. I 100% disagree.
I think sure.
So what was the? And I'm not 100% on this. I may be bringing up an example that proves your case, not mine. But like, what was the Whitewater thing, or the Watergate rather? Excuse me.
Which one?
Watergate.
Watergate
was the Republican
wiretaps from Nixon inside the Oval Office.
No, Watergate was Nixon.
That was Watergate.
No, it was a paid group by Nixon to go break into the Democratic National Party offices and steal paperwork.
I think it was still recordings, but yeah.
Either way. So, who published that story?
I believe it ended up being the Washington Post.
Okay. So, that's probably not a good example.
Was it Deep Throat?
Yeah, that's not a good example because
the
state was the one that was committing the treasonous act in the first place. But
I think Deep Throat was Bob Woodward. I think Bob Woodward came out as being one of those people.
Yeah, he just did a recent one. What was the new one that Woodward just did?
I don't know if he was Deep Throat, but I think he was like one of the main people involved in it. Yeah, I think he was. I don't think he was Deep Throat. He was the other person that Deep Throat gave the evidence to, or whatever.
Yeah, he reported the Watergate scandal.
Yeah,
but I don't know. That was a bad example.
He reported, but I think Deep Throat was his like inside source or whatever. But I think that was all actually like audio recordings from inside the Oval Office.
Yeah, like I said, that was not a good. It didn't damage my point, but it wasn't a good example for what I was trying to get to.
Gotcha.
I think. I guess the number, Assange is the example I'm thinking of, and he's technically.
I don't know. I mean, in my mind,
he's technically
it makes sense.
A fugitive from the law.
If I came across like,
all right, so if
a yellow Manila folder that said like top secret on it, and I was like, hey, I'm going to mail this to the Kremlin.
No, that would be criminal. Because you'd be aiding a foreign state. That's a different animal. Like you're directly aiding a foreign state. Publishing it to the public.
I'm just a citizen that was just disseminating.
Right, to a specific enemy of the state. That's a totally different thing.
How?
Because you're being specific about your target.
So if I gave them to a friendly, it's okay?
I don't know. That's a different. Again, you're putting it out to a specific individual. That's a different.
Okay,
thing.
Sorry. So same thing, and I gave it to Great Britain. It's still all kosher.
I mean, you didn't. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know.
Really?
No, I really don't know.
I'm pretty damn sure I would still get prosecuted if I gave this to British MI5. Like their intelligence agency.
I don't know
because they are quote unquote American secrets.
Okay.
If I knowingly give what I perceive and it is my knowledge as state secrets, something that I recognize as something that is quote unquote top secret, or I know there's many levels above, quote unquote top secret.
Yeah, I mean, again,
if I give that stuff out and knowingly do that, I'm pretty damn sure I am criminally liable, no matter if I give it to an enemy state or an allied state.
Okay.
You are still giving out state secrets.
I don't know, but that is a different scenario than the one we're talking about. Because we're starting on this Kansas story about a media publisher, and that's what I'm trying to. That's the angle I'm going at here. I don't think the New York Times would be at fault, or would be criminally liable from the specific journalists themselves all the way up through the publisher and the ownership of the New York Times and the whole mess. If they ran a story that included a document considered sensitive information. They do that shit all the time.
How?
What do you mean how?
Give me an example.
I mean, they run. They read stories from leaks of whoever's in the White House's assistants telling whatever this, that, and the other. They talk about.
There were leaks that had already come out.
Already come out. What does already come out mean? Because somebody else, a different publisher, talked about it first?
Yeah.
Oh, but was that publisher arrested? That told the story first, and then the New York Times told the story about the story that the other story said?
I mean, most of those times, if it's something... I mean,
there's got to be
I read multiple stories like every day where it's, pretty much reliable reliable quotes, but it's something that is put out that they were speaking on the condition and anonymity.
How many times
they weren't authorized to speak on that?
How many times is the phrase documents obtained by us, whoever the news company is, show this,
right?
Tell this,
And 99.9% of the time, that's information that has been given to them legally, whether it was by Freedom of Information Act or other sources.
All right, I'll have to do some research because I don't think that.
I agree. They have to walk a fine line, posting like top secret things, and most reputable news organizations go out of the way not to produce that kind of things just because they don't want to be in hot water with the Justice Department.
Okay. I don't know. I'll have to do some research and look into that. I'll ask Scott and Jesse what they understand the rules are, because that's the easiest way to answer. As a journalist, if I'll put it to them that way. I'll say, if I handed you a piece of paper that had top secret, this, that, and the other stamped all over it, and just walked away, and you found it to be something that you believe would be important and interesting to your readers, would you publish it?
I think they would say no.
I think they would say yes. Because I would think as a journalist, you'd feel obligated to it.
I think
especially if it's something scandalous and important.
As a journalist, until they verify it. As a journalist, you're not going to publish something under your name that you're publishing this piece until you verify what you're about to say.
Okay, doesn't change.
It could totally be a fake fluff piece that you just handed them in a nice, stamped top secret envelope, and they're like, "Oh shit."
I will add I will add the phrase, assuming that you can verify the authenticity of the document I handed.
Yeah.
So if you can verify that this is a secret document that you are not supposed to be able to see. And more importantly, if
it's verifiable,
and you verify it, I don't know that
journalistically is it verifiable.
I don't know that matters legally to our conversation's sake. But
it doesn't matter legally. But
ethically, as a journalist, I agree with you.
I think it adds more to them.
All we're talking about is the legal.
If you're trying to get them to say that they would legally do something, I would like to think their first question would be, as a journalist, is it a verifiable story?
You're right, 100%. But assuming it was verifiable, would you publish it? I bet you they would say yes. If it has what they would call the interest of the public,
right?
If it includes if they believe that it is in the best interest of the public to know, then they would publish it.
Right.
And I don't think they would. I would think they would do so thinking that they would not have criminal consequences for it. And I
could see it, yeah.
Because I think that's to me that's supposed to be the job of journalism, is to keep the state on their toes, to keep the state honest with us.
Right.
They're supposed to be the ones that are. What's it? The third estate? What they call it? Isn't that the?
Huh?
It's like the third estate or something like that is what they call it.
Not sure what you're talking about.
They're the ones that are supposed to fight back for us. All right. Yeah, DUI thing.
Yeah, that was just another crazy layer to the story.
Yeah, the judge has DUI stuff.
Yeah, like I said, like that newspaper hadn't even mentioned anything on it, but it was the news article had mentioned that there was like a Topeka and like another like major newspaper that had mentioned. But I guess it was also kind of questioned as to whether or not like these two separate jurisdictions knew that she actually had DUIs in two different areas. Let alone her still being a sitting judge.
All right, so it's time for you. So are you wanting to use one of these as your News of the Weird, or you have your own separately?
Oh, that was two different things.
Okay.
I just ran into there was a few of this, like their fact check.
Right, the top didn't happen.
Brought it up a few times, and I'm just like, man, like
crazy.
These just are just fucking crazy. I'm like, it just dumbfounds me that a major news organization feels the need to put this out. That like, hey, just so you know, this is fake. I'm assuming it's got to reach a certain level of viralness.
It'd be a fun job to be the one that gets to go find those stories.
I don't know.
It'd be hard because some of them might be hard to verify, but
Yeah, most of them Hawaii story pretty easy to verify.
Some of them might be a little hard to verify. Maybe not all of them.
Yeah, but as far as crazy news of the weird, I didn't have any really great ones.
Oh, shit, wrong button. Man, I suck at this game. Watch you a little bit more time. News of the weird, Samalama. Here we do. While he's looking, I'm going to tack on a little thing at the end. I had a little conversation with the guys from Compass about this special session coming up. Not specifically about the parts and pieces that are in it, but just about this kind of habit that our state has gotten into doing special sessions of late. So if you're interested, stick around for that. It's like I said, it's I find it interesting that this will be 3 years in a row that we've had a special session, maybe 4. Yeah, because they can't get 17,000 bills passed in 4 months, they need to have a special session to pass a couple more. So anyway, yeah, let's do it. Come on, Sam, give me the goods.
No, I already told you I ain't got no great ones. Oh, got a Connecticut kid.
There's no nudity. Come on. There's no more nudity in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Not yet, as of late.
All right. Anyway, the best you could find on short notice. Go.
Okay. Connecticut kitten mystery solved.
Connecticut kitten mystery.
Connecticut kitten mystery solved.
Okay. Hit me. Give me the goods.
Guess there was a car accident. Police found a kitten in a stolen car. They say have located the animal's owner, a juvenile suspect who fled and was arrested after the car crashed.
So the car owner's kitten?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's not that big of a mystery. What the fuck are you talking about mystery? Kid stole a car, had a cat in it.
Yeah.
Mystery solved.
So the department said the youth said nothing to officers about the pet, which was found under a seat. Instead, police were led to the owner by someone who responded to the department's Facebook post earlier this week looking for the animal's owner.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes it a little better.
In the meantime, a number of people contacted authorities looking to adopt the cat. Police said they found the cat while searching for evidence.
So not only did their car get stolen, but their cat got stolen, and then a bunch of people tried to steal their catty cat. It's fucked up.
They didn't even tell the police that there was a cat in their car.
All right, well, they're bad cat owners. They shouldn't get their cat back.
Apparently it was a juvenile. Anyway.
No, the owner.
Right.
Whose cat was it? The kid or the car's?
The kid's.
Oh.
Oh, was it? It was the car's cat.
Well, the people that own the car that he stole the car from. Did I just make up the car theft part?
Okay, no, the kitten was his.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, he's going to jail. He can't keep his cat.
They figured the kitten was his. Yeah. Apparently he had a kitten when he was in the process of stealing a car.
Oh, okay. And so they identified the thief by the cat.
No, they found the thief.
I don't understand. Okay, I'm so confused.
Police say they found the feline while searching for evidence after the stolen vehicle collided with a patrol car during an August 10th chase. Police were pursuing the vehicle on suspicion that it had been used in armed robberies in several nearby communities hours earlier.
Oh, it's a cat burglar. These are the jokes. All right, that was a little subpar. Just because I was confused, it made it okay. He stole the car with his cat. Used the car to...
If I'm reading this grammatically, so they found and located the animal's owner, a juvenile suspect who fled and was arrested after the car crash.
So there's a second suspect. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I think it's just that same person who stole the car.
Okay, so he wrecked the car. Okay, so they figured out who he was by the cat.
I think they found him not long after that.
So confused. Okay, so kid jumps in the car with his cat, steals the car.
Yeah.
Robs someplace, runs off, gets into a chase with the cops, runs into the cop car, gets out, runs. Cops are at the car, collect his cat. They grab him, thinking it's him, not sure. They put out a Facebook post trying to find the cat's owners. People verify that the kid that they already have in custody is the cat owner, therefore linking him to the vehicle that he stole, therefore linking him to the armed robbery, therefore kid's going to jail.
Sure, they linked him to the armed robbery. Let's see here.
He was being pursued under suspicion of. That is the News of the Weird, people. I'm going to do the News of the Weird theme song, and then we're going to cut to that thing with Scott and Jesse. I'm going to rerun it because I want to do something separately. Because I thought of a question when we were talking about special session, but it didn't make any sense to add it to your guys' show. How much, like, as a percentage, how many times do you think they pull a special session?
Ooh.
How many times what?
Like, is it regular? Like, I mean, we did one last year. We did one the year before last.
We've had a couple in recent years. I remember Bill Haslam did one to try to get Medicaid expansion done, and that didn't go anywhere. So I think they've been more common in the last few years. We have been having about one a year, it seems like, the last few years, but that was because of the pandemic originally, because they had to, in 2020 they ended their session early because of the pandemic, so then they had to come back later in the year to kind of finish up stuff that they hadn't gotten to, and then they called another special session the next year to deal specifically with education. So we've had more special sessions, I think, in the last few years than is normal. It's not something that you typically get like every year.
Well, I guess like it was kind of, I don't know. You guys have the history. I don't. Like, I just started paying attention 3 years ago, and it's been regular for me in the last couple of years of paying attention. And it feels like a lot of this stuff, like, I understand the specifics of the gun violence one on this one because it was so late in session. Even if it was something that everybody was even remotely on board with, it was going to be hard to squeeze in those last couple of weeks anyway. But it almost seems to me, as the layperson that's barely paying attention or has been barely paying attention, as this is the way to squeeze stuff in that you somehow didn't fit in the regular session anyway. Like the education one, especially to me, it seemed like, yes, I know we had a lot of pandemic money we had to figure out how to deal with, but it also seemed like this was going to cover a lot of stuff that there was no reason they couldn't have covered it back during regular session. So again, like I guess the inference that I'm pulling out of it is this is a way to squeeze some stuff in that maybe we wouldn't have if we actually bothered in a regular session.
One thing that has happened in the last few years, and I'm really not sure why, but they put a lot of pressure on themselves to get finished with the regular session as fast as possible.
I got a solution. Do less shit. Jesus Christ, they do so many damn bills every freaking year.
Well, the other thing is take your time. I mean, it doesn't, and so when there are things that come up that might require more attention, like education, or gun safety or firearm safety or public safety, whichever.
Let me see if I'm understanding
what you want to call it. But, instead of, those are things that do require a lot of attention and it might take some time. But instead of adding another week to the regular session, they are, I don't know what do you know why they gallop to the finish on, really?
Well, I think it varies by year. Like, for example, this year they galloped to the finish precisely because there were all these huge crowds of protesters.
They wanted to get out of it. Yeah,
they wanted to get out of town, and then like the Tennessee 3 thing happened, and they were sort of like national, punching bags in various ways. I think they just wanted out this year. The thing that happens in even-numbered years is they are not allowed to raise money while they're in session. And in even-numbered years, every member of the state house is up for re-election. And so in those years, I think there's often an impulse to end the session quickly so they can all get out and start raising money.
They can get to the real work of keeping their jobs.
Right.
Because, I mean, what I hear from what you were saying, Scott, is that it's an admission of we don't really spend a lot of time or energy on the 1,600 bills a year that we put out. We just wait to do a special session because it's something that we actually need to focus on.
Well, I think every special session is different. There's kind of different things behind it. Sometimes, I mean, I don't want to say that this one that's coming up is more symbolic than anything else, but it probably is.
Functionally, it will be, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that, one thing that comes into play is the relationship between the governor and the legislature, because either one of them can call a special session. The legislature themselves can initiate a special session, or the governor can call them into special session. And so, for example, like with Bill Haslam, when he called the special session to try to pass his Insure Tennessee package to expand Medicaid, I think he was really trying to kind of put them on the spot in a way. And he was
because it can't get lost. It can't get lost with everything else going on in a regular session,
right? Or just kind of buried, or our committee didn't get to it, or whatever. If you call a special session for that issue, like you're going to focus on that issue, and in that case, it didn't work. But it at least, he was at a minimum able to say, "Well, I really tried. I did actually try to do this." And I think in this case,
Governor Lee's kind of on that same.
Yeah, and I think Governor Lee maybe was a little frustrated that he came out right after this shooting and in the wake of all this public outcry and said, I think we ought to do something. And the legislature just basically blew him off and said, well, we don't think so, Governor. We're not going to do it. We're shutting down. We're leaving town. And so, Tennessee has a relatively weak governor because he can be overridden by a simple majority of the legislature. So we're a state where our legislature is actually the most powerful branch of state government. But one of the levers a governor has is to say, well, okay, you didn't want to do what I asked you to, so at a minimum, I'm going to interrupt your summer vacation. Right. You're going to come back to Nashville, and we're going to talk about this.
And at a maximum, I'm going to make you look really, really bad on the topic because there's no distractions from this one.
Right.
Anybody talking about state-level government next week, they're only talking about this one thing. And where you sit on that, depending on your constituency, can be a big problem for you.
He had to go through a lot of negotiations with the legislature ahead of this special session to get any kind of cooperation. And I think how limited the topics are that they're going to talk about and the fact that they kept almost any significant discussion of firearms off of it.
The only one on there is the safe tax.
Well, the temporary mental health orders of protection. There is a limited version of a red flag law on there too, but it's quite limited and also is pretty clearly dead on arrival. I mean, the Republicans in the legislature have basically said we're not doing any version of a red flag law. Just forget it. So I don't think that one's going anywhere.
There's 7 Republicans who would support it.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
But I think that special sessions are. Right. They can be for lots of purposes and they can represent different things. And in this case, I think what you're seeing is a governor who wants to be on record as saying this is a problem we need to deal with.
Which I think
he's putting himself on record, and it is also right. Well, you're probably going to say it's politically.
I think that's the most curious. So to be on the grander politics part of it is like he's termed out. This is his last governorship. To me, the hierarchy of elected offices is you're going federal and really Senate or better. Like I don't think a House seat is a step up from a governor for a lot of people. I think he's either winking and nodding at a DeSantis, which is a bad place to be for vice president. But I think there's a vice president, maybe a top level cabinet position, or maybe a Senate run would be the only logical move politically speaking from here. And as the Republicans sit right now, I don't think this is one that's going to look good on his record going.
Yeah, but that's also assuming Lee wants to run for something else, which we don't even know. And on the flip side, there's a lot of polling that shows that actually majorities of Tennesseans do and would support greater kinds of gun safety regulations. And so he can kind of certainly argue that he's putting himself on the side of quote unquote the people. And that's one reason the Republicans in the legislature, they know that. They can read the same polls as anybody else. It's one reason they very much did not want to come back for a session. And if they did come back for a session, they didn't want any of these, broader gun safety things on there because they know there's public support for it. Right. And they don't like being in the position of having a whole bunch of people yelling at them for something that they're just not going to do.
And one of the things that Lee can say is I tried.
Right. Yeah, and that's a win for him. Right.
That's if you lose, you could say I tried.
Yeah.
While I don't know how far that really gets you, if you're going to run for something in the future, it's not going to get you very far.
You feel better about yourself talking to your grandkids when you're old and infirm and all that kind of stuff.
Or your wife whose best friend was just murdered.
Right. Yeah. And so to close it, to wrap it all neatly in the function part of it, a bunch of Republicans are like, we're not even going if this is a red flag law thing. What's the rules on that? Like, can you just not show up and there's no penalty for it?
Yeah, you
could even get so bad you don't have a quorum. I don't know what the
danger of that is that all of the Democrats in their very limited numbers are going to be there.
Right.
And so if you, like, let's say you're a Republican legislator who doesn't want any of these things to pass, your best bet for that is to show up and vote against them. Because if you don't show up, you reduce the threshold,
right.
For things to pass. And
yeah, because you could still have, committees can still have quorums, but then you've got closer to a Democratic majority
of people who bothered to come, and they're all going to be there. That makes sense.
If for no other reason you go to kill everything,
Yeah. Thanks. All right, thanks to Scott and Jesse for. Well, they're already here for their show, and I just stole an extra couple minutes on the end of their show to tape that. I don't know. We'll keep an eye on that special session of nothingness. Like, there's really nothing on it. So anyway, we're Almost Agreement. AlmostAgreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Go to the website almostagreement.com. While you're there, check out the voter guide that doesn't exist. Go to CompassKnox.com. All their election coverage is actually past the paywall now, so you can go for free to CompassKnox.com and get a bunch of coverage on these city races that we're looking at right now. So that's that. Favorite podcast provider: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Like, follow, friend, share, retweet, re-X, I guess now. I don't know what they call it with the X. So Facebook's the only really place I'm active on as far as making arguments, or almostagreement@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll do another show next week about more things and whatnots and who's-its, and we appreciate y'all hanging out. We'll talk to you later.